And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Susan Ahern, who has had 5 near-death experiences, which we are going to learn about today. Susan, thank you for being my guest, and welcome.
Oh, thank you, Jeff. I so appreciate you having me on tonight.
All right, Susan, if you don't mind, let's just start with your NDEs in chronological order and go from there.
Sure. So the first one was when I was about 7 years old, and I was the youngest, or the smallest, I should say, in the neighborhood. And a group of us used to climb over the stockade fence behind my house and race as fast as we could up to the train tracks when we would hear the train coming. This must have been a nightmare for my mother. But this was a game that we used to play to see who could catch the train. I don't know why we did it, but anyways. So I'm climbing up the fence and I get knocked down, and I'm climbing up the fence and I get knocked down again by another friend that's climbing over, and I'm the last one over the fence, and I lose my footing. And at the time I had a little hoodie sweatshirt on that was zippered up, and I rotated, tried to catch myself. And when I did, my hoodie got stuck. My hooded sweatshirt got stuck on the stockade fence, and I couldn't move, and it was choking me. And my little legs were trying to push up against the fence, and I couldn't reach around because now you're all jammed up, and I couldn't undo it. I wouldn't have been able to undo it anyways. And I was struggling. I couldn't breathe, and I probably had about 5 minutes to figure out what to do. Where I was behind the garage that we had, no one could see me from the house. My mother at that time was doing the dishes, standing in the window doing the dishes, and she couldn't see me. She couldn't hear me. I couldn't scream anyways because the air is occluded. So all of a sudden, this really peaceful feeling came over me, and my little legs stopped kicking, and I just surrendered to what it was. It wasn't a mental thought of surrender. It was just this wave of peace. And I thought, well, I am going to try and call my mom in my brain. Somehow at 7 years old, I knew I could send a message to my mom through my mind and get her to come out behind the garage. And I kept saying, Mom, come out behind the garage, come out behind the garage. And then everything just went dark. There was like a letting go feeling, and everything just went dark. I felt like I was transporting through this darkness. I wasn't aware of anyone else there to come, take me the way. There was no tunnel. There was nothing. It was just darkness. And then I woke up in extreme pain. And when I woke up, I was on the grass about 6 feet away from the fence, and my mother was shaking me. And in that moment is what brought me back. And she kept saying, oh, she was so mad, but she was scared. And she said that I was just the worst color purple she'd ever seen. And she never wanted to see purple again. It was very dramatic for her, and I can only imagine. But when we talked about it later, she had said, something, she was freaked out because she was like, something made me come out there, made me come out behind the garage. She didn't know what. She said she just stopped. She still had soap on her hands. She left the dishes, came out to the back of the garage, and there I was. And I think that scared her the most, was her tapping into that ESP, or that additional, maybe mother intuition, you may call it, but that freaked her out more than I think me being home. But so that was the first of my my near-death experiences. Now, and I don't really, back then we didn't go to the doctors. we didn't go there. So as long as I was okay, I remember my throat being really sore. I had a marker across my neck. That all went away. And as long as I wasn't bleeding, I think I was fine, right?
It's amazing that your connection with her was enough and strong enough to get her to actually hear you or feel you and come out. Did she just tell you that she had a feeling, or did she hear a voice or anything?
She said, and she did, she said she heard a voice or a nudging to go out, to stop and to go out and look behind the garage. And there's nothing behind the garage normally. So she probably blew it off, the first time she heard it, but then it was stronger. And she said, when I ever got out there, she said it was a mother's worst nightmare. Mm. And of course the kids kept going. So I was just dangling away, waiting for someone to save me. And what I do remember is when I came back into my body, when she was shaking me, I thought, oh, what did I do now? I'm in trouble. It's kind of that feeling like I came back into my body and I remember everything just hurting. It was almost like all of my nerves were coming alive again and kind of crashing back into your body.
It kind of sounds like you were in the black void for a while, but it seems like once you got into the blackness, you kind of went unconscious until you woke up in your body. Is that correct?
That sounds correct. Yeah. Yeah. All of a sudden I was back. I do feel like I went somewhere. I was not in my body anymore. I wasn't viewing anything. I was in this tunnel of I don't know. It felt familiar as well. That in-between space. It wasn't anything that I felt afraid of. And even in my struggle, even when I was struggling to undo myself, the panic stopped. All of a sudden, there was a calmness about it. Like, this is okay. Or this just is. And it was a trust or an accepting of, oh, I guess this is it. Or, oh, here I am. And as a 7-year-old, you would think that there'd be a lot of fear there. There really wasn't, which was interesting. It was just kind of like, okay, and like an unspoken understanding. So
after that experience, did you notice any type of changes within your psyche or your personality?
I think I always was. I used to, even as a young age, as young as I can remember, I could always see people, and that was the first gift that I was comfortable with, was being able to see, which I would call my transparent people and my solid people. Now, we're the solid people. My transparent people were, other entities, saints, ghosts, whatever we want to call it. They were my transparent people. And so I always had that. And I really wasn't aware, because I don't think at that age, you don't know, you just assume everybody gets that intuition, that understanding. You don't ask where it came from. You just go, oh yeah, isn't that the way? So yeah.
All right, let's move on to your second one.
Okay. So the second one was, I was 24 and I was delivering my last child. I have 3 children, and it was post-labor. Everything went fine. Labor was fine until post-cesarean section. Had the surgery. I'm in recovery, and I could feel something different. Something was happening to my body, and I knew it wasn't right because I'd had 2 C-sections before that. So I was kind of like, understood what the process was, and I said, oh, something's not right. And the nurse was like, oh, don't worry about it. You're fine. And I said, no, I really feel funny. And she said, well, your blood pressure and everything, it's okay. So not to worry. And plus your surgeon is in surgery with somebody else. So you'll have to wait till after that surgery is over before he can deal with you anyways. So I said, okay. So now I'm getting this impending doom feeling coming on, and I know something's wrong. I know something's wrong really bad, and nobody's listening to me. And so now I've got my husband, my ex-husband, and I said, something's wrong. You've got to get someone to listen to you, because I know something is really not good. And so nobody seemed to listen. It was really crazy. Nobody listened. Nobody was paying attention. Oh, don't worry about it. You're fine. Your doctor will come in to see you in a little bit. And so like an hour and a half later, by the time he was done with his other surgery and was able to see me, my blood pressure now was tanking. It's dropping. They can't figure out what's happening, because a clot had formed, and I wasn't showing blood, so they couldn't figure out what was happening, and I was bleeding out internally. And so by the time they could figure it out, it was too late. And so internal bleeding is very painful, and so I was in extreme amount of pain, and I kept asking for. They were giving me the most medication they possibly could anymore, and that was going to be a problem. And I kept asking to see my baby, because I just delivered my baby, and I haven't seen the baby yet, because now I'm in an issue. And they kept denying me. They're like, "No, you can't see your baby. No, you can't see your baby." And I said, "I really need to see my baby, because I'm dying." And they're like, "You're not dying, you're fine." And now they're yelling at me, because they're panicking, and they know I'm dying, but they don't want it. So yelling at me made them feel better. I'm not very sure. So then I'm like, well, and then this extreme pain that went on for at least an hour. I couldn't go back to surgery, because I had no more blood left. Basically, my blood pressure was so low that they would have lost me in surgery. So they're trying all these things, and then all of a sudden, that extreme pain stopped. And I mean, I was conscious, I was aware, I knew that I felt like I was just done trying to advocate for myself. No one's listening to me. It doesn't really matter. They wouldn't even give me oxygen. I'm like, I don't think I'm breathing. Can I at least get some oxygen? And they didn't want to. No, you don't need it. And I'm like, okay, this is crazy. I'm out here. I'm like, that's it. I've done everything I could. They wouldn't even let me see my baby one last time. And that was the last thing I remember asking was, let me see my baby one more time before I go. You're not going anywhere. And then this surrender just came over me. It was the most beautiful, peaceful, tranquil moment that I will never forget. It was this wonderful surrender that I just came to terms with everything and went, oh, okay, I guess this is it. It kind of like, it was the same understanding as when I was hung myself on the fence by accident. It was that, oh, I guess this is it. Oh, okay. There was no fear, the human aspect of me was, how is my husband going to take care of 3 children, an infant and 2 babies under 5. I had 3 children under 5. That was not going to happen. And that was my fear. But that then went away, almost as if it was like this unspoken word that everything's going to be okay. It'll be okay. Everything has a process, and everything will be as it shall. And they went, okay, I trusted that. Wherever that was coming from, I didn't know at that moment, but I was like, okay. And the pain lifted. I slowly stopped breathing. So even in my live state, I was already doing the death process. There was still, I'd say, probably a half an hour of this death process before I actually went to the other side. And so there was this time of understanding and calmness and quiet, and it was probably me not wanting to let go of my children and my family. And then when I realized it was nothing I could do, that I let go. And it was quick, like it was brightest, beautiful white light you could ever imagine. And then I was there. And where there is, I'm really not sure, but it was a very beautiful place. I think some would call it heaven. I'd hate to label it as anything because it really felt like almost an in-between or a holding place. It kind of sounds weird, but it was, I was all in white. I was younger. As in my visual self, as I'm looking at myself, I went to a time that I felt good. And so I was a couple years younger as I'm standing there, and I'm in this non-dimensional space that was really bright but very foggy. And I'm standing there alone, and I'm calling out to the people that I can sense. So you can kind of see people through the fog, but I couldn't see. There were shadows. There was no one that I could recognize, but I knew them, which was a weird statement. So I'm like, hey, everybody, I'm here. Isn't this great? I'm all excited. And look, I made it home. And I was so excited. And I wasn't getting any feedback. And I was the only one that was speaking. Everyone else was using telepathy. I could understand them, but I was the only one still verbally speaking. And have you ever had that moment when you walk into a room of people and something tragic has happened or something intense is happening, and you walk in all bubbly, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, what's happening? That's how I felt. I landed and I was so excited. I walked into this room going, yahoo, where's my party? And everyone's like, oh yeah, about that. And I was like, what? And they're like, yeah. And then I was like, but no one would tell me. And I was like so frustrated. And then this most amazing woman spoke up, and she said, Susan, come over here. And I go over there, and I'm now whining because I'm like, I made it here, and now I have to go home. Something's like, where's my party? And I'm like, whining up in heaven. It was like wonderful. So I climbed up on this woman's lap, and she was the most amazing maternal, the most beautiful soul ever. And she was just gentle and kind and quiet, and she just let me go and ramble on and how I want my party. And it was just like this big thing. And then she just quieted me, and she said, it was her time to explain what was going on. And she said, we've made a mistake. I said, well, what? And she said, yeah, we there was a little mistake, and you weren't supposed to die just yet. And I was like, so I'm not supposed to be here? Do I have to go home? Like what happens? Like what happens, And she said, well, because you've made it, we can't send you home because you've made it. You're here. So we're going to let this decision be up to you. And I said, well, I really, I kind of like it here. This is great. And, and she said, well, if you're willing to go with these two kind of like angelic presences, and they just kind of, I went with them. And I said, okay, I agreed. I was like, okay, I'll go with them. And she said, so what you'll do is you're going to see your past, present, and future. And then you can decide if you'd like to stay, and then you can stay. And if you'd like to go back, then you'll go back. And I said, okay. So I went with these two angelic guides. They took me now to a different space. It was like a darkened movie theater. And so I'm just watching my life, past, present, future, in quantum time. It's, it was like, and all of a sudden I had this intense panic. It's like, and I swore. I was like, oh shit, I gotta get back home. I have, like, within that second of, I have to get back ASAP. It's already too late. I left that space. I crashed into my body, and I took that gigantic breath of life again. And when I did, every cell, even my eyelashes, everything hurt. It felt like I was falling from the Empire State Building onto shards of glass and nails and anything you could possibly think of that was sharp. And I landed, and it was just, I took this huge inhalation, and then just was like, ugh. And the first thing that I said was a swear word. I went, oh, I chose this. F word. I went, oh, fudge, I chose this. And knowing that that was a conscious decision to come back here. And then my life started back up again. And, but I was not the same. That was pretty traumatic, because I had made it, my ex had said that they lost me 4 times in that whole process. And so when I came back, my life was going to be totally different from that moment on.
Susan, thank you for sharing that with us. Was the woman that you sat on her lap an angel? Because she had to be big in order for you to sit on her lap. And it's pretty common for people to describe to me as angels being like 10 feet tall.
She was very large. She never introduced herself. It was an understanding that I knew who she was. It was the Blessed Mother. I sat there on her lap, and it was just the most maternal, most beautiful energy. I will never forget it. What was interesting is that her face was nondescript. It was blurred out. And I thought back to that, and I thought, okay, could I describe her? And I said, oh, but she was so beautiful. Well, what did she look like? Well, I don't know. What color were her eyes? Well, I don't know. But she was just so beautiful. Okay, so what does that mean? Is she energy form? And so I've created what was comfortable for me as energy form. Is her energy form change with anyone else, and everyone else? So those were the questions over all these years. It's been 31 years since that experience.
When you say the Blessed Mother, are you referring to Mother the Mary of Jesus?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Are you Christian?
Yes. Yes. I have spiritual. I am spiritual. Am I religious? Do I, have I fallen away from my Catholic? If I ask my mother, I fell away from my Catholic upbringing. But no, I feel closer to my religious belief, my spiritual belief, than I ever have.
I've heard before that 50% of the people who have an NDE end up in divorce. Is your divorce related to your NDE?
I don't think so. There was, and it may have. There was a lot of things going on for us at the time. We were going through the Gulf War, and my ex is a Marine. So there was a lot of things that were happening for him, and financially, and there was a lot happening at that time that flipped our world upside down. So I wouldn't blame it on the near-death experience, but it definitely was. I was not the same. I was not the same partner.
In what way?
I was driven. I was driven to help. Um, I 2 months after I had this near-death experience, 2 months later, I signed up to a 6-month long EMT class at the college. Now I have 2 children. I have 3 children. One's an infant, and now I'm going through college class. And I thought, oh my God! Today I look back and go, oh, it was crazy. Who would do that? But my need to connect with those who were in that near death experiences, I should say, those who are, in motor vehicle accidents and things like that were really important for me to be there. I was drawn to being in those traumatic situations. Now, was it because of other things that have happened or because I went through something that was very traumatic? Maybe. Maybe I wanted to make a difference, or felt that way at that time.
When you saw your future, did you see your future of your family without you and what it would be like to be without you? Or did you see your future with you in it?
I got to see both. And that was actually when I saw that was when I was actually still alive, but going through the death process in that half an hour before I left. I got to see that and I went, oh, that's not going to be good. And I really felt so bad for my ex because he was totally overwhelmed. And it was just, I could, you're grieving the loss of a partner and now you're dealing with 3 little ones. So, yeah, and it's interesting because past, present, and future all happened all at the same time. So you weren't watching one thing. Your brain was giving your brain something that clearly it could handle, but something I wasn't aware that it could handle. Yeah, it was very interesting.
Now, after this NDE, did you notice that you had any new abilities that you didn't have beforehand?
Yeah, I was a lot more psychic than I thought I was, or all of a sudden it was coming. I felt like it was a gift for going back. Thanks for taking one for the team. You're going back here. Here's a little extra. That's what it felt like. Is now weird things were happening. And I had this knowing that I didn't know where it was coming from. And I would just say things. It would just kind of fly out. And then they'd be like, who told you that? We didn't tell anybody that. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. I don't know. I just made it up. I get really nervous and go, oh, I don't know. And, you'd run away from it going, oh, that's got to stop happening. And it never did. It just kind of flows out. It keeps, it just happens.
So you would just kind of blurt out things that you were seeing
Right.
that would happen in the future.
Right. Yeah. And I had no control over it. And if I would get mad, like if I was really mad, I usually don't get mad at people, but when I do, it's not good. And I would just say, well, blah, 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 and I'd throw out something and we'd be like, and I'm like, oh, I don't know what that meant. And I don't know where that came from. And I would apologize, but it was like, yeah, well, you're going to get yours. So you just better watch out. And I'd be like, oh, sorry. So it was really awkward. It was very weird. So I did a lot of training. I sought out shamans from all over the world. And I wanted to learn a little bit about each one and whatever they had to help me figure out what was going on. I had no idea. And it just kind of opened. It wasn't like, okay, so next week, this is what's going to happen. We're going to slowly ease into the psychic thing. It was like, boom. And it was tough. It was really tough. Like I would hear children crying and screaming, and it was like in a bus, and I would get this vision of children crying and screaming in a bus, and I'd turn on the TV and they're like, oh, bus accident in Michigan, bus rolls off the ravine. And I'm like, okay, that's not helpful. I don't want to know this. I'm not in Michigan. I can't stop that. So I need to know how to control that, because I still need to function and be as normal as I possibly can. And so that's when I, started seeking other people to kind of guide me through the process.
Have you at that time told anybody about your first or second experience?
No, Irish Catholics were really good at not talking. Don't tell. It was like it was a really something that we just didn't do. We don't share a lot. It's over. Let's get past it. Forget about it. And so I really didn't. And what am I? I'm 56, and it's taken me this long to really kind of share in depth all of them, because I know that there's something that I've gone through that it can be so helpful for somebody else in their experience. And just before COVID, I wanted to create a group so that we could get together and have a safe place for people to tell their story. And then COVID hit. So that kind of fell by the wayside, unfortunately. So thank you for having your show.
Oh.
I appreciate that.
Thank you for being my guest. By the second time, had either one of those experiences made any impact on your beliefs as a Catholic?
Interesting enough, I did share my experience with my mom. And I said, that I had my whole experience with the Blessed Mary, and how I sat on her lap and how I was there. And of course I got chastised, and it's blasphemy. And who was I to think that she would even come to me? And, less than holy. Why would she pick you? And I'm sure she didn't mean those in those terms. Once again, it was her fear. And so I went, okay, yeah, we can't share this with anybody again, because that did not go well. So we're just not going to share. And, but I know, you could hook me up to a lie detector. I could, I know my experience. And I think that really, if nothing else, is such an important message, that your experience is yours and no one can take that away. And as crazy as it sounds, or as different as it, or it's not like any other near-death experience for anyone else, like, it's still yours, and you get that, and you get to own that for the rest of your life until other lifetimes, if that may be. So.
All right, if you don't mind, let's move on to your next one.
Okay, what was my next one? I was, so in my need to save the world, I was a firefighter, I worked as an EMT, and I also worked as a police officer. Because why do one, right, when you can save all the world? So while directing traffic, I got hit by a car. And I needed surgery. And so I had injured my knee, and during post-surgery, I had at some point passed a clot during my sleep. And when I got up to move, the clot moved. I looked at my leg, it was really black, and I went, oh, that's not good. Maybe I was sleeping funny. So I went to get up in the morning and do my routine and walking around, and it dislodged. And 3 days later, I passed it through my heart again. And because of my age, they said that I survived it. Normally, the situation that I was through, how I passed it twice, they're like, no one ever does that. Like, that's crazy. And so there's a big thing in the fire department. Like, if you got your chance to die, where would you want to die? And place I never would want to die is on the toilet. That was that place you never want to die. and where I was working with all these people that I knew. I didn't want people that I worked with to find me dead on the toilet. That was not going to happen. And so I knew I was getting sick. I just didn't know which end. And so I went to the bathroom, and that's when all of a sudden the clot goes through my heart. It stops. I fall forward, slumped over, and I'm like, damn it, this is that thing again. I'm here again, this feeling. I'm dead again. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. What the heck? And I'm having this like little conversation with myself. And then I realized I was looking at myself, and I went, oh, hell no, I am not dying on the toilet. That was like, it is not happening. Vanity, whatever we're going to call it. I immediately panicked, thinking, oh, okay, maybe I have enough in me that I can just like, I'm not dying here. This is not where I'm dying. Even if I can get off the toilet and get my pants on, like I was thinking all these crazy things. This was not where I wanted to die. And within that thought, maybe it was the adrenaline, the panic, I don't know, my heart started beating again. And I mean, I was a mess. I was enough that it took me a while. It took me about a half an hour to really regain enough blood flow, oxygen, enough to move, to be able to call for help, even just to open my mouth and call for help, because I had a roommate sleeping upstairs, and they couldn't hear me. And I lied there going, this is the worst ever. And I was very fortunate. I was able to get to the phone and make a call. But yeah, that was a crazy one. But it was that space where I was more viewing my body than out and going. I hadn't taken off. So I hadn't been, and I don't really know why I didn't take off, but it was different than the other two, which was definitely a out of here. And the first one was a kind of out of here, but in the void. This one was just hanging out with me in the bathroom, kind of like watching myself, trying to get out of it.
It's kind of like a first stage. You just kind of popped out of your body, and you didn't even make it to like the void or a staging area or anything. You were just kind of there and popped back in. Right. Now, I wonder, I always think, okay, if this happened, say, in my bedroom or in the middle of the night, I probably would have left, because I think that it was just so traumatic for me to die in that fashion that it wasn't going to happen. And so I felt like I kind of I was on borrowed time. Like I was like, oh, I escaped that one. Whew. So that was that one. It reminds me of another guest I had who was doing a drug in a club and had died, and he'd realized it would be too embarrassing for his family for him to go out that way, and that, I think, was the catalyst for him to come back. Isn't that funny? I've never met somebody else that was just as horrified. Like, oh my God, I can't do this. And that was it. That's funny. Thank you for sharing that. That's interesting. Yeah. I think most of the times when a person chooses to come back, it's probably they need to take care of their family or something. You know, or they want to be with their children. Right. Yeah. Like now at this point, I'm a single mom. So I don't have time for this. Right. But you and this other guest, where they didn't want to be in an embarrassing situation. Right. Exactly. Don't want to be caught with your pants down. So and I think the number one place where people do die in their house is their bathroom. It is. Yeah. It's that first morning business that gets you. And so after seeing enough of those working on the fire department, the rescue, I was like, that is not it. So anyways. All right, well, let's move on to the next one. Okay. And so in between, just a little sidebar. So in between all of this, I had been struck by lightning twice. Wow.
Yeah. One when I was 16. And then one later, um, just after this incident. And both were quite electrifying, but not enough to, I don't count them as near death. I was zapped, but it wasn't like the others. But it was an interesting little side note. Okay, so the next one is it's Christmas time, Christmas Eve, and I am in a passenger in a vehicle, motor vehicle, and we're heading to get last minute stocking stuffers and food preparations and blah, blah, blah. And we are picking up some things. We pull out and we're in the vehicle and we are in a motor vehicle accident and we're hit by this really big truck. And we were in a big truck. So we spin around 1,000 times. The driver's head hit the steering wheel and it bounced off the steering wheel and it hit me in the chest, right over my heart. And it stops my heart. And this was so interesting as well, from a scientific point of view, because the car stops and everything is now stopped and I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, wow, it's really quiet. Like everything was just eerily quiet. And I thought, what is going on? This is weird. What is happening? That was the first thing I recognized, was this strange silence. And what had happened was there was nothing going on in my body. So your heart and the blood and your other organs makes a lot of noise. And you don't realize it until everything shuts down. And it was really quiet. But I hadn't died yet. I was still in probably that 5 to 8 minute period of silence. And then at some point, I take a shift and I'm I just remember looking, going, nothing hurts. I'm kind of like, oh, I guess we got into a car accident, kind of like whatever's happening, blah, blah, blah. Not a big deal. There's no panic, and that's when I was like, damn it. I am dead again. This is it. I can tell, like, not again. And my feet I was above the cab, but my feet were still in my body. Like I kind of lifted up and I was still connected from my head. And I was half out of the cab, but I was able to look down into the cab as if it was like this 3D see-through type of thing. And I was able to view myself and the person driving. And then I realized, as I'm looking at the Christmas things, and I went, oh, hell no. It is Christmas Eve. I have 3 children waiting for me at home. I have to cook dinner. I haven't even wrapped presents. I had this long list of going on. I have a pile of dirty laundry. I have the clothes that need to be folded. Like I was going through everything possible of why I was not going to leave. And I was mad. I was furious. And I was having this conversation with what I would say God, but it felt like more than one person. It almost felt like a council, and almost as if I was debating my case about why I am not leaving today. And I got really mad and I was yelling and I said, how dare you take me on Christmas Eve away from 3 children who they're now not going to have a mother, and you're going to ruin Christmas forever. And I'm ranting away like a crazy mother and got really protective. And I said, you know what? Let's make a deal. You take me any other time, I don't care. Just not today or tomorrow, because tomorrow's Christmas. No, take me whenever, but not now. Let me figure this out. And I think because I got so angry, there was so much passion in having to stay and being willing to negotiate, that And I didn't hear, it was a very one-sided conversation. It was like they were just letting me spout off and ramble on and blah, 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 and make all these statements. And they just listened very compassionately. It was like, I was the only one mad. They were like, it's okay, Susan, not to worry. It's all good. I never heard those words, but I felt like it was okay. Like they just listened. And then I just came back into my body. And that's when everything hurt again. Like even your little eyebrows and my eyelashes hurt. And like my everything, every cell in my body once again came alive, and it hurts.
Why do you think it hurts coming back in your body? Or why does it?
I mean, for me, maybe this is just a unique experience for me. I think because you're turning on the nerve connections, that your nerves are now, every cell and fiber in your body is now turning back on. And that's got to be why. It's like, I wonder if that's what it feels like being born, coming out and just being born. That was my experience.
It's interesting because I think some of the times that people will say it hurts, they've also had themselves resuscitated or something. So I just assumed it was due to that medical procedure, but you're not having that procedure and it still hurts.
Right. And at no point did I have ever had, the paddle. So no, I think it's just your body's now turning back on. I mean, I was out of my body. So when I came back into my body, which was kind of interesting, when I came back into my body, I came in sideways. I didn't come in straight. And I had, and I'll tell the story of how that came up. I had almost like it was kind of transient amnesia. I would have these periods of time where I would meet the same person like 5 or 6 times and go, oh, it's wonderful to meet you. Like I was setting the dinner table or going to get my daughter at soccer, and the kids would be like, Mom, where are you going? I'm like, oh, I'm going to go get my daughter from soccer. And they're like, you already picked her up. And I'm like, oh. So it was a lot of neurological misfiring happening. And I went to the best doctors in Boston, and he just said, you know what, I don't see anything wrong with you. Unless you want to take the medicine, the drugs that we're going to give you, there's nothing else I can do to help you. He says, unless you want to go to a shaman, and then that's your only option. And he was being facetious. And I went, oh my God, you're right. That's what I need to do. And I got up and he's like, no, I didn't mean that. As I said, no, that's exactly what I need to do. I need holistic medicine. And that's when I left, and I did see somebody, and he said, it was so cool. He said, you're half out of your body. You're not in correctly. He said, did something happen to knock you out of your body? And I told him about the car accident. And he goes, yep. And he did some stuff. And within 10 minutes, he goes, no, you're fine. Now you'll be better. And I came back into my body. I was secure. My transient amnesia went away. I was able to think clearly, and it was amazing. He said, you're half in, half out. So you're getting half of the information. He says, you're not completely there. So, yeah.
All right. Well, we still have time left. Let's move on to your 5th one.
Okay. All right. So the last one was just a couple of years ago. I had some skylights in my house that we had a bad nor'easter storm. The skylight started leaking, and I was going to work on it and fix it and try to see if I could rectify the situation, or at least take down the sheetrock that was really wet and soggy. And I was working on the house by myself, and I was up on a ladder, and I have cathedral ceilings, so they're pretty high. And I'm cutting away at the sheetrock, and the builder didn't put strapping in the ceiling. That's maybe too much information. So the sheetrock wasn't secured. Well, it was only secured by maybe just a handful of sheetrock screws. And I was assuming it was done correctly, and it wasn't. So as I'm making my cuts, assuming that it was secure, almost a whole sheet of sheetrock let go and started to fall. And at that same time, I was using a tool that cuts the sheetrock pretty fast, and my cord got stuck. And so I turned to look to undo my cord. And when I did, it saved my life, actually. So I turned, instead of being straight on and taking it straight on, which then would have sent me out the window behind me, I got it caught in the side of the head, and it cracked me in the side of the head, and it knocked me off, and I was able to land on my feet, which I don't know how I did that either. But that's, for the most part, I mean, it saved my life so that I had this moment. It bought me some time. So I took a blow to the head. I saw my phone. I had about 15 steps to grab my phone and then get out of the construction site, because I was like, oh, this is not going to be good. I can tell already. Grabbed my phone, laid down in the hallway before I passed out. And before I could call 911, I was out. And I was out for 2 hours. At one point, I did come back. Everything was spinning. And then I passed out again. So I don't really know, because I was alone. I don't know exactly what happened, other than I'm in that void. I'm in that space, that dark void. And it was really comforting. There was no pain. It was very soothing. It was familiar. It felt like home. And then I heard my mother's voice. And my mother had passed 2 years prior to that accident. And I heard my mother's voice, and she said, "Susan, are you bleeding?" And I went, "Nope." I remember I checked my hands afterwards, but I was like, "Nope, I'm not bleeding." And she said, "Good, you're going to be fine. Get up." And I went, kind of like came back. And that was kind of always our thing. Like, if I was to get hurt, "Are you bleeding?" "No." "Okay, you're fine." And it was like kind of a joke, kind of a funny joke. So here I am hearing my mother's voice again going, "Susan, get up. You're fine. You're fine. Like, you can't stay." And I was like, oh, why can't I stay? Why do they keep kicking me out? So I think I passed out again after that, because I looked at my hand, and then I was like, "Nope, there's no blood. I'm fine." And then boom, I passed out again. And that was it. I finally woke up. I was able to sit up. I was able to go. I drove myself to the emergency room, which was stupid, but it was not too far away. So I got there, and they were like, I keep hearing the same thing. "I don't know why you didn't die. People that fall or get bumps in the head with a lot less don't survive this. We don't know why you're alive." And it's like, well, my mother said I was fine, so I'm going to go with that. So, yeah.
I believe your mother died after your 4th NDE.
Mm-hmm.
How did you take your mother's transition after your 4th ND? How did you take your mother's transition since you already had 4 NDEs? Was it upsetting to you, or you felt like, oh, she just crossed over to the other side?
What was upsetting was her belief system, very, very strict Catholic, was not within. She tolerated now my new aged version of religion, and in helping people pass on. I helped many friends pass over. People would call me and say, "Can you help my family member?" I would go and I would do that for them. And but I couldn't help my mother. She wouldn't let go. And she it took her 12 days of suffering, of just sitting, hanging on. Now, whether she was suffering or not, I don't know. It was suffering for me to watch her holding on. I kept saying, "Mom, Can I help you yet? And I was getting that, no, this needs to be her choice. This process is her process. And I had to accept that this was going to be her way. And it had to be. This was her death. And in life and in death, it's got to be your own way. And it was so crazy for me because it helped so many people pass over. Can't I help her? My own mother? No. And it was so painful. And just sitting there 24/7 between my sister and I, watching her and helping her and making sure she was as comfortable and as possible. And then when she finally left at the very end, she did it her way. She just did it her way, and I had to honor that and find comfort in that. But she did come afterwards. She came 2 months later to visit, to come to me. So that was wonderful.
Was that in a dream?
No. So I also do table tipping. It's a physical mediumship, and where you can talk to, like, I can talk to people that have passed, but I want to be able to help others to heal their process with the people that they love. So I have clients, and we come to this. It's an old Victorian table, and the table tips and moves with messages from past loved ones to the people that are here at the table. And that's when my mother came. I went to visit this woman that does table tipping, and I didn't expect my mother to come, but I was told to, by spirit, I was told to go learn, or to at least witness this and see this, that I needed to go see this woman and learn what she was doing. And so I was there kind of learning. And then my mother came through, and I was blown away. I was absolutely blown away how healing that was for me and for my mother.
When you say you were told by spirit, can you tell me a little bit more about how that happened?
Oh, sure. So I picked up a really great guide in between one of these near-death experiences. Mm-hmm. I think it was the second one. And so I have a really good working relationship with this guide. And it's an angelic guide. They give me the heads up on what I need to know. They help me when I do my readings or do any of my work, basically. I'm just kind of the vessel, and they use my physical body to do healings, to give messages, to work with table, to help people that way. And or wherever they send me, or whatever they see that they need me.
So it sounds like at that point you're channeling your guide then.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They're very physically, they're right there. They're always just like kind of right there. And so I do. So when I do my readings, I ask, I get your permission. I ask your guide to connect with my guide, or my guide to connect with your guide. And then they kind of, as I see it, kind of tattle on you, tell me everything that I need to know for your highest good. And I don't waste time on what happened in the past, your cat's name when you were 7. I mean, that doesn't matter to you. It's about you here moving forward and navigating on this planet for the period of time that you're here. And how can we make that most beneficial? Because that's really what it's about. And so your guide lets me know everything. And my guide tells me, and that's how I do my readings.
In your first 2 NDEs, obviously it came down to you surrendering. I didn't hear you use that word with your others. Did you experience that when you were helping other people transition, that they needed to surrender? And do you think surrendering is the key?
I would say surrender is the key. It's coming to that place, because I did need to just kind of, with the first 2, was just after I realized no one was listening to me, I wasn't going to get oxygen. I wasn't going to get the medical help that I needed. I knew I was dying. I just had to surrender, and it was okay. Like, Susan, it's just going to be okay. And that was the message I got, was all of our fussing and worrying in our physical human experience. Really, when you make that change, it's all gone. all of that ego presence, like I have to be here, doesn't mean anything. There really isn't any ego when you step across the, into the void. All that goes away. And I think that when I was in the bathroom, and that one of the near-death experiences was my ego was very strong. I am not dying with my pants down on the toilet. That is not going to happen. That's all ego. And so, I was the only one that, but no one else would have been horrified. I was the only one that was horrified. So ego, definitely, there's no place for that on the other side. That all has to surrender. You have to surrender that human experience of all of that stuff to make it across and go.
Do you feel like the other side is at least just as real as this side, or even more real?
It is very real. Yeah, it's I think I have more friends on the other side than I do human friends. So there's it's happening. Sometimes people will say, "Oh, can you, talk to Aunt Edith for me?" And I'm like, "Well, she's kind of really busy right now." She says she can't. So it's like, just because we want to talk, she's not sitting here waiting for some human to call her up and say, "Hi, we miss you."
Mhm.
She's got her stuff. She's like living her best life over there. Yeah. Like she's come to terms with everything. And there is a process. There is a huge process that we go through. We just don't shift over, and it's amazing. There's like a almost like an intake, and like we have to like fill all these paperwork and stand in this line, and you're next, and kind of, I mean, it's not that human experience type of feeling, but it's that same thing. You have to process, and some people don't. Some people really struggle, and so they can't let the ego go, but they are dead. So where do they go? In that in between place. And
Would you say they become ghosts?
um suffering souls, yeah, they're those people that just can't let go, or can't let go of tangible items. If you need possessions, like you really love your car, and yeah, I've seen people like not want to leave their possessions, or not want to leave their home because it's their home. And it's like, dude, this isn't your home anymore. You got to go. It's okay. So one of the shamans that I learned from helped me to work with entities, and seeing what happens, and working with things, possessed items, and helping them move over. You'll see a lot of shows that like talk to them and get them all riled up, but they don't help these people. There's somebody's son or daughter or family member. Help these people move over to the other side so that they can find peace. That's gratifying to me. That I've just saved a soul. Someone that's not suffering anymore. Now, is anyone making them suffer? No. I think it's our own suffering. We can be our own worst enemies. And I think, from my perspective, is the only suffering they had was they were creating it and perpetuating it, and it was ruminating and ruminating. It's like, oh my gosh, let that go. It's okay.
I see from time to time someone will say in a comment, "I died and I saw nothing and I came back." Do you think it's because they just don't remember, or maybe they were just unconscious and didn't do anything?
Well, when you go into the black void, there's nothing. You're in that in between space, and there's nothing there. So maybe you just were like, "Bloop, there's nothing. I didn't see anything." But when I was unconscious on the floor, and there was nothing as well. Like I didn't even have the black void. I just was in a space, and I heard my mom's voice. So, and her voice was what brought me back, basically telling me it's not your time. There's more to do. Go back. it's kind of like chutes and ladders, you climb up, I shoot down. I'm like, oh, but yeah. So in each one of my 5 scenarios, they were each different and each very, very unique. And so no 2 people are going to have the same near-death experience. We are all unique, and so our death experience is going to be unique.
What happens next after you get processed? Do you stay there for eternity, or do you come back, or do you go somewhere else, or what?
I see this a lot with overdosing. People that have overdosed, they sit in a space of, they're lost for a little while. They don't know, because they're still in there. They don't know if it's their drug-induced space or they're just confused. They're still confused. And if they can slow down long enough to listen to their guides, they're not alone. They're not sitting in nowhere land out there floating in space. They're actually in a space with loved ones and their guides. But they can't get out of their own way. When you're just in your mind and you can't stop a thought or something, and you're just in that space, that's kind of it. There's no clear thought for them, because when they died, they were in that drug space, which is out of their body anyways. So I think when you're out of your body and then you die, where do you go? I don't know. I just know that they sit in this in-between place. They can get out of it. They're at any point in time when they choose to get out of it, they get out of it. And then they move on to healing and forgiveness and love and that unconditionalness. But they don't feel that for themselves. So they wouldn't do that to their body in the first place. So it's a learning process. They have to learn that. And some are quick learners. You're right. That was horrible. Why would I want to be in that? I want to be in this now. And whoop, over they go. Some people that just can't let something go in life. We know those people, right? They can't let anything go. They may be those people that get stuck a little bit. So it's good to practice for self-forgiveness and in being in a good place before you get there to help you make your transition if you're worried about it.
That's good advice. I've already gone over my normal, usual time that I do this, so I need to change gears with you.
Okay.
If people want to reach out to you and ask you questions, are you up for that? And if so, how should they reach you?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I love connecting with people. And if I can help in any way, I love that. I have a website. It's CapeCodHappyMedium.com. And they can message me there. It shows different things. I mean, I don't know if you're on Cape Cod in Massachusetts, you can find me. But if you're not and you're someplace else, definitely reach out to me. You can find me Happy Medium on Facebook. And it's all one word. And I'm not on Instagram. My Instagram got hacked. I had someone impersonating me and doing readings and collecting money under my name. So I stopped that. So if you need to get me, you can find me at CapeCodHappyMedium.com.
All right. You have anything else going on that you want us to know about?
I've started doing table tipping again. And it's a wonderful opportunity to connect with spirit. All sorts of people come through. I've had Jesus come to the table. I've had the most amazing saints come through. It's wonderful because you can smell the fragrance of flowers, and the energy shifts. And the best message that I received, like when Jesus came through, he said, I want more people to come, and I want more people to experience the beautiful love that happens at table. It's just this beautiful feeling and healing that takes place. He said, I said, well, do I say that you're here? Because people are going to get weird, and, and I'm already weird because my mom yelled at me once. And so I'm like, he said, no, he says, you don't need to say it's me. He said, you just can say that there's a beautiful presence here at the table. And I went, oh, okay. He's like, I don't care if ego. Yeah, I need, he doesn't care. He's like, that doesn't matter. If the end result is that there's peace and love and we can come to a place where we can all coexist, he said, that's what's most important. So, yeah.
All right. Well, before we finish up, can you leave us with one last positive message?
One last positive message. The strongest, most powerful thing that you can do, especially right now where there's a lot of chaos and there's a lot of different views trying to pull us in different directions, is if you can start the day in love, that beautiful love feeling, if you can find love for yourself and love for others, that is stronger than anything. That is the most strongest energy that you can hold. And it's so powerful. It can break down all sorts of things. It can push away the negative that's out there. And just walk in your light. Remember that you're a beautiful soul, and shine bright so that others can see it, so that we can all recognize each other and stand together in the light. That's the most important thing.
Susan, thank you for that message, and thank you again for being my guest. Have a great rest of your evening.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.